for Pound Sports, everybody. I'm Nick Eustace.
And I'm Slippery D.
Slippery D. I love it. Thanks for so much for joining us once again. We're doing some really big things here. It's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride the next couple weeks, but we got some awesome things in the works, some interactive things. Just doing some really, trying to think outside the box, if you will. I got to throw out our website, pfpsports.com.
I hate that term, by the way, dude. I'm sorry.
What's that?
Outside the box.
Outside the box?
Yeah.
Well, deal with it. It is
what
what
else
it is.
can you say? I know it's taken over.
There's a lot of things I'd like to say on regular radio that I can't.
No.
But we got to fit within confines. It is what it is. ESPN Radio main page. Click on that radio. We're going to be on every Saturday, 9 a.m. There's a really cool radio option on there. It's an app that we found in the App Store that basically will let you listen to ESPN Radio live here in San Diego, so you can hear our show in full. Like I said, we're going to be doing some big things. We're going to be doing 2 shows back-to-back here pretty soon, so sit tight. Facebook, Pound for Pound Sports. That's what you want to search that, right? Pound for Pound Sports.
Oh, Pound, yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
Go ahead and like us. Also, if you're not close to a computer on Saturday mornings, there's a really cool mobile app that you could get. It's TuneIn Radio. We're on that. I know a couple people that a friend of mine actually was on a boat in the middle of the ocean listening to us. So do it.
Do it. And at Nick, PFP Sports.
I'm at Darren, PFP Sports. PFPsports.com is your website.
And we get all those shameless plugs out of the way. You ready to roll?
I am.
Let's do this. UFC on Fox 4. It drew very well despite going head-to-head with the Olympics. I would ask, does it surprise you? I mean, it doesn't. It does surprise me in the sense that it was the Olympics, but it doesn't surprise me just because it was free for one thing. And if it's one thing we do know for sure, it's that those free cards have been drawn great all year. I mean, just in terms of viewership and quality. I mean, let's be honest. Does that surprise you at all, the fact that...
You know what? It really didn't. It didn't surprise me because... we're that crazy kind of sports fan that are just fanatics about everything. But I think if you look at mixed martial arts and Olympics, just to generalize them, it's kind of 2 different demographics in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
It didn't surprise me, no.
Well, I mean, Dana White, in some of the clips we've been uploading on the video news scroll all week, Dana White actually said he was surprised just because, he wasn't sure what to make of the viewership and some of the projections they were looking at. And one thing he can't deny is the fact that they're drawn really well, about as well as any Olympic Games ever.
Well, and they're not live over here.
That's the problem.
I'm sure that takes a little bit of the excitement away from it for some people. I know it does for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was just going to say, I want to remember at the beginning of the Olympic Games, I was thinking, man, this Twitter is really great, because 4 years ago, Twitter and Facebook, that's how fast we're moving. They weren't really much of a factor. And here I was ranting and raving about how great it is, but then, here I am about 2 weeks later feeling the exact opposite because, I'm hearing the results long before I even get a chance to see. By then, I don't even care anymore. That's just me. I can't speak for everybody else.
No, yeah, I feel the exact same way.
It's really hard to get into it, but, I'm glad for the UFC, the fact that they drew really well. Like I said, it doesn't surprise me because it was free. But one thing I hate is the negative publicity that Dana White and the UFC get with ratings. I don't care if it's on FX or if it's on Fox. The fact is, everybody's always counting those numbers. We know the scoreboard doesn't lie, but they tend to get a lot of negative publicity, I think, the slight hiccup in action, or if they don't draw what the projections show that, they should draw. All you get is a bunch of bad press, and I can't stand it, to be honest with you. But like I said, I'm glad they drew what they drew. Good for the UFC. One thing I did notice about this card, though, was the bone, if you will, that Dana White threw out there at the co-main event. The guy with the most impressive performance out there would get the title shot. And we were sitting here last week thinking, how much of that is in response just to the the crummy card, main card, not undercard in Calgary,
right.
And he really threw it out there. And I got to be honest, if that's what he was going for, guys go out there and leave it all on the line. He got all that and then some.
Yeah, but it's styles make fights.
That's true.
We said it last week. Once they announce the matchups, they can't get in there and fight the fights for the guys.
That's true.
So I really don't think that had any effect on the outcomes of either fight, to be quite honest with you. It went down exactly how I thought it was going to go down. Not that I'm trying to sit here and say I'm some sort of badass that could predict the future or nothing.
Yeah, but you don't think that put a little pressure on the guys to go out there and just not play it safe?
Is there anybody in the world that didn't think one of those 4 guys was going to get the next title shot?
Yeah, well, most guys thought that it was just going to be up to Shogun and Vera until the fans, voiced their opinion.
Well, because that's what Dana said, a couple days prior. But I don't think there's anyone out there that's been following the UFC closely that didn't think Lyoto Machida was knocking on that door.
Yeah, he was knocking on that door, no doubt. And, like I said, Shogun was knocking on that door simply because he's Shogun. The guy was coming off a loss to Dan Henderson, so talking about him getting a title, I don't know where they get off doing that. But in my opinion, the right guy won. I'm glad, not just because I'm a Machida fan, but the guy has looked more impressive his last 3 fights.
He's next in line, and I think it's kind of funny that everyone's just assuming he's going to fight Jon Jones. And Jon Jones does have to beat Dan Henderson, which I think he will do. But his style, it matches up good against anybody. I mean, we saw him win that first round against Jon Jones before getting losing. He eventually lost,
But I mean, as far as he lost when he closed that distance, and Jon Jones got a hold of his neck. But when he was keeping that distance the whole first round, I mean, in my opinion, I can't ever remember seeing Jon Jones lose a round.
No,
really.
I think that's the only round he's lost.
That was about as bad as he's ever looked, And Machida made a mistake, and he paid for it. But I mean, in terms of matchup, I think you're right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, Dan Henderson's, don't go to sleep on that guy.
You can't go to sleep on anybody in the UFC,
but not Dan Henderson.
But this is one of the. It's another lopsided
intriguing matchup.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that in a few weeks. But yeah, I think the right guy won, and like I said, it was a great showing for the UFC. Great to see they did great ratings. I mean, it was a great card all around. I mean, and I expected nothing less.
You know what? And if I could just say something more, the UFC's all the cards have been great. It's funny how you get one card like the last pay-per-view, and everybody wants to bash it and talk about how lame it is. But MMA is the most exciting sport in the world, in my opinion. And I know we're huge fans. Most of you guys out there are. But it is the most exciting sport in the MMA. You watch baseball, you watch football, you watch basketball. How often do they have a dud? How often do they throw out a crappy game?
You're right.
And nobody's hopping on that. You watch NFL's right around the corner. You watch some game that's 9-6. I mean, that's not appeasing for the fans, but nobody wants to get on their case.
You're right.
Every once in a while, they're allowed to have a bad card.
They're bad. They're allowed to, I don't want to say stink it up because the undercard was fantastic in my opinion. But, Dana White actually, he was saying that very same thing. He goes, one point in time, we had a string of like 16 straight fights with like finishes and just they were all fantastic, and it sucks because, in the world we live in, it's like when you're doing great, you never hear nothing. You only hear something when people are unhappy, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, like I said, great showing for them. Glad to see them doing the things that they're doing. I can't wait to see another one. Next story, Diego Sanchez. He's returning back to the lightweight division. He's made it known that his desire is to return to the lightweight division on a permanent basis. He says on Twitter, it's back to 155 for me, and it should be good. I mean, like I said, I think he's rehabbing a torn labrum, if you will. And, he's had mixed success in the welterweight division. I mean, I don't think anybody can deny that he's, I don't want to say overmatched, but he's clearly not the bigger guy. And the problem with welterweight division is there's a lot of bigger guys, and there's a lot of great wrestlers in that division. And I think that's always been his Achilles heel. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say he's about 2-2 in the welterweight division after his loss to Penn. He got out-muscled by John Hathaway and Jake Ellenberger. But he was 2-1 in the lightweight division, and that includes his loss to BJ Penn. So I don't think the numbers can lie. The fact that that's clearly the division for him, I think. And making that cut, if he's doing it the right way, it's going to translate into a lot of speed. And clearly that's the division for a guy like that. Is there any argument there for you?
No, it's definitely the division he needs to be fighting in. I'm not sure how much success he's going to have in that division.
It's a stacked division.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, the dude was a force, and I know that the stories out there, he got some money, he got some fame, and he went partying, did some drugs, whatever. Who want to do that?
That's what most people do when they get broke off like that.
Yeah, I mean, but I just don't think at this point in time, if you look just at let's just take the last 4 years, for example, the sport, I mean, it's evolved so much since day one, but just take the last 4 years, and the sport has evolved so much to where a dominating wrestler, you can't win on dominating wrestling alone anymore.
No.
And you used to be able to. You look at a guy, Matt Hughes, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, he dominated a weight class for years strictly because of his wrestling. He always had shoddy stand-up and just so jiu-jitsu. But long gone are those days. You look at I don't even know. I mean, you got Jim Miller. There's just so many contenders in the lightweight.
The lightweight's crazy.
I mean, I see him going in there. Maybe throwing up like a 500 record. I don't know. I think his best days are behind him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the fact that his better days are probably behind him. I mean, I think he's already peaked. But I mean, if he's going to come back and fight, I mean, let's face it, there really are no easy divisions in the UFC. I mean, for me, what it really comes down to is weight cut. Is he going to get out muscled? That seems to be his that's his downfall in the welterweight division. So.
Gray Maynard, that's who I was trying to think. Gray Maynard's the perfect example of who I was talking about. I couldn't think of his name for a second, but Gray Maynard's the guy that came in as a dominating wrestler, but he has improved tremendously on his striking.
you bring up Gray Maynard's name, go off on a side note. That's a guy that really amazes me that he makes 155. I mean, that guy could easily be one of those wrestlers at 170 that we're talking about.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
that
sure.
guy. I think I heard Joe Rogan's podcast say. I mean, when he's not running a camp, I mean, I think he walks around 190 between 190 and 200. I mean, that's one hell of a cut, but. I mean, it's pretty standard for wrestlers. I mean,
yeah, he's
not
been doing it his whole life. He's probably used to it by now.
Absolutely, but I mean, to get to as far as Diego Sanchez is concerned, I mean, his dance card's going to be full in either division. I mean, like I said, pick your poison. I mean, that's really the way I see it at the end of the day.
At this point, I'm even wondering if he could crack the top 10. You got Bendo, Edgar, Nate Diaz.
A lot of fights out there.
I mean, there's all kinds of guys that I think would fare pretty well against Diego Sanchez at this point.
Yeah, we'll find out. I mean, like I said, he's rehabbing that shoulder, so only
Anthony Pettis.
And there's another one. I mean, like I said, there's top 7 guys that you mentioned, all in a row,
Yeah.
Jon Fitch, speaking of 170-pounders, Jon Fitch, I don't know if you heard today, he calls out BJ Penn, says he's a coward, says he's not welcome over there at AKA. In my mind, I mean, I can't help but to think it's a ploy just to get the matchup with Penn after Rory McDonald pulled out due to injury. I mean, do you see it as anything but a ploy to get a marquee matchup like that?
You know what? I look at this completely different. Jon Fitch, what is he worried about BJ Penn for? He's already got a fight lined up with one of the sport's fastest rising stars, in Eric Silva. And let me tell you something. Eric Silva is primed to.
You mentioned yeah.
I mean, he's already got a fight booked for UFC 153. Yet he's calling out BJ Penn.
I think it's ridiculous, and I've been sitting here saying it for weeks. I mean, if it's one thing as an MMA fan, an analyst, whatever you want to call what we do, I can't stand seeing guys pick fights with other guys when they're, like I said, they've got a mountain in front of them. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But would you argue that there's probably more money in a fight with BJ Penn? Should he get to that point?
Well, the problem is that if he loses to BJ Penn, okay, well, it's BJ Penn. He's losing to Eric Silva. Eric Silva's still kind of trying to make his name, and he's going to lose to Eric Silva. I'm going to say that right now. He's going to lose to Eric Silva.
Yeah.
And so...
It wouldn't surprise me.
And maybe it is about the money. Who knows? Jon Fitch has had his time, though, man. He's so tired. His style... I mean, he's got to be the most boring fighter in the UFC.
Well, I'll tell you what, to pick up on that statement, every fight since September of 2007 has gone the distance. The only one that hasn't was his knockout loss to Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, he got knocked out stepping into the cage practically.
Yeah, I mean, every single fight has gone the distance. I mean, you can't argue its effectiveness, but, I mean, as far as, entertainment value, I mean, I think the fans are speaking pretty loud here,
The only thing that even would sell those two guys fighting is the fact that it was a majority draw last time, right?
That's it. That's the
only thing that would sell it, but at this point, who wants to see that fight? I don't want to see that. I'd rather see Eric Silva run through him.
No desire, and you know what? You might just get your wish.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised to see it go that way. Speaking of getting punked, Junior Dos Santos. I mean, it's hard to get under that guy's skin, man. He wants to punk Alistair Overeem first, and then fight Kane or whoever's next in line after that. First off, I want to know, which fight would you rather see? Would you rather see Dos Santos fight Kane again, or do you want to see the new blood come in there and see the matchup we were supposed to see last December?
Well, I would. I think Cain Velasquez, in my opinion, is the number one contender. So I would actually rather see that fight. But I totally get being able to sell more pay-per-views would be the Overeem fight, because they could bill Overeem as the heel. Cain Velasquez, Junior Dos Santos are both kind of nice guys, both well liked, but they could totally twist those stories with Overeem and Dos Santos. So I think that would be the bigger pay-per-view. But me as a fan, I would rather see Cain Velasquez and Junior Dos Santos now.
Well, you know what? See, I mean, I kind of differ in opinion there. I mean, that was the fight that we were supposed to see, is Overeem and Dos Santos.
Yeah, but we were supposed to see.
Yeah, but
then he tested dirty.
That's true. But that was next in line, And like I said, I would be happy to see either one. But I would argue that a lot of fans probably would rather see a matchup that they haven't seen. And
I agree.
Juice, no juice. I mean, everybody wants to see the Reem get back in the cage.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, you asked me what I would rather see. I would rather see Cain Velasquez. I think Cain Velasquez. I mean, just look at the way he dismantled Bigfoot. I mean, it was one of the most one-sided fights we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and like I said, Bigfoot's no joke. I mean, I think you're right on the money. I think that clearly Cain Velasquez is probably more deserving of the shot. I mean, as long as Dana White's in the listening to the fans type of mood, I mean, really, I guess it really depends on what the rest of the people think. This would be a great question to take calls on, actually.
But you know what? Why should, and we said this last week again, why should he be rewarded with a title shot?
No, I don't think he should. I don't think he should. If you're going to ask me which fight I want to see more, I would say I want to see that fight. But
I mean, the fight's eventually going to happen. If you truly feel like you go in there and knock them out, you should be able to beat whoever else they put in front of you in the meantime.
I agree. For me, if by chance he is going to fight Overeem, and I mean, it sounds like Overeem is whatever he said has served its purpose. He's got under his skin. Overeem is the guy that Junior Dos Santos wants to fight next. That's what he's publicly gone and said. For me, if that fight does happen, I mean, I would like to see either fight. I mean, either fight's no joke. I mean, in my mind, I mean, you look at fighting Alistair Overeem and Cain Velasquez. I mean, can Dos Santos get through either one of those guys and the way he wants to? I mean, would you be surprised to see him knock either guy out, or do you think he has trouble with one? I
would not be surprised to see. You know what? It's funny. You could put the three of them, any matchup you want between the three of them, you know, whether it's Cain versus Overeem, and I want to be surprised with any outcome, all three of them. You know what I'm saying? I think they're very close. I think those three are very close to where I could see, you know, I can make an argument for Cain going in there and knocking both guys out, and vice versa with the other two.
Yeah, every single one of them has legit one-punch knockout power. I think you're right on the money. I mean, if you had 10 different outcomes or 10 different fights, you'd have 10 different outcomes. That's just the way I see it. Not Dos Santos, Overeem, he maintains that obviously he's clean. He says he's the most tested athlete in sports, and still he's 265.
Yeah, when they test you when you don't know what's coming, you piss dirty, right?
Or when you find your own when you find your own clinic to go test.
Yeah, give me a break, man.
Like I said, man, I can't wait to see it. I mean, clearly he's got a full dance card. I think Velasquez has got hard to argue with the fact that guy's next in line, and rightfully so. Although if they make the Overeem matchup, I'll be the first guy in line to buy
heavyweight
a ticket.
division's in good hands, man. All three of those guys deserve
either one.
It could be, you know, I could see all three of those guys wearing the belt.
I love watching any one of those three guys. I mean, like I said, throw rock, whatever hits. I'd love to watch Be the Champ fight. I can't wait to see Overeem come back. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah. That guy, he's just got this mystique around him. I mean, he's been champion at every promotion, every level he's ever, you know.
I want to see him fight somebody real. You know, and no disrespect to Brock Lesnar, who, you know, the guy got a lot more money than I do. What does he care what I think? But
nothing.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean,
every legit dude could run through him right now.
He's one-dimensional. That riddle's been solved.
He can't take a punch. I mean, he crumbles like a sandcastle. We've seen that happen.
Like I said, that riddle's been solved.
Yeah.
Stuff to take down, punch him in the face. I mean, that's pretty much how it goes.
Yeah.
Speaking of heavyweights that you don't want to see anymore, Andre Arlovski, Tim Sylvia, 4 at 1 FC number 5. Got to get your reaction, man. I mean, I can't imagine it's going to be any different than 99%.
You want to know
what
my reaction was?
Lay it on me.
Do you remember? I'll tell you something now. UFC 61 Bitter Rivals.
I was there.
Do you remember?
I remember.
Do you remember how disappointed we were when we were leaving the Mandalay Bay?
You took the words right out of my.
I mean, do you remember how upset? And that was when both these guys are relevant and in shape.
Relevant. This was
top of the sport.
Now, you know what? It's funny because at that point in time, UFC 61, that was the Junior Dos Santos Overeem matchup in the heavyweight division. It was on that level.
That card, I will never forget the amount of excitement we had going up there for that card. I mean, that must have been one of the biggest hyped cards ever.
I think you're right.
And leaving with just pure disappointment.
You know what? It was that card that actually changed the way I look at going to live events, mixed martial arts. I mean, that event really told me, and everybody else for that matter, that it doesn't matter what it looks like on paper.
No.
And it was then that and it's funny because you follow it up with a few more events where on paper it doesn't look great and they turn out to be amazing. You know, but disappointing fight.
Getting to this fight, I mean, one
Terrible.
FC. I mean, this. I don't know. I'm going to be honest with the fans out there. I've never watched a 1FC event live. You know, I've seen fights from 1FC on YouTube or streamed or whatever. But I mean, it just seems so pathetic to me that they're clinging on to these guys with names who have no. I mean, their MMA careers are so far behind them. You want to talk about a guy like Phil Baroni is one of the guys that they keep on signing to fights. Jens Pulver, love Jens Pulver, but stay retired.
5 years too late, man.
Yeah, stay retired. And same thing with these guys. I love Andre Arlovski. Nobody's been a bigger Andre Arlovski fan over the years than the two of us.
I agree.
I mean, and nobody, and especially you. I mean, you've been.
I've been a huge fan of that guy's for years. I mean, and even I will sit here and tell you, man. At some point, you know, in my opinion, he's already gone out on a shield a couple of times. You know, it's time to hang it up. As far as how do you justify I mean. If you could justify a rubber match, I get that, but justify. I mean, maybe you could throw out that third matchup and say it didn't count because it was lackluster. But I would argue, you know, you're looking at an Arlovski that should have retired a couple of years ago. His chin is clearly suspect. You're looking at a Tim Sylvia who's 40 pounds overweight.
You know, I read an article where Tim Sylvia was getting interviewed, and he was originally slated or rumored to be fighting Daniel Cormier, and apparently that was never even close to coming through. But I read an interview where they were talking to him, and he said, you know what? I consider myself the top 20 in the world. And I'm thinking, just the fact that you got a professional fighter saying that, who says that?
You have to extend 10 to 20 now.
Who says I think I'm in the top 20? Who says that?
Nobody says that.
Exactly.
Nobody says that.
I mean, I've seen some of his fights where, I mean, dude looked like he was 350 pounds, man.
He's over 3 bills. He is. He absolutely is. And that's what I'm saying. Like, how does he even make down to 265? I think that's why Dana won't have him in the anything Zuffa. And you know what? You mentioned ONE FC. I mean, they're widely regarded as the joke in the MMA community.
Which they should be.
Absolutely. I mean, you got 1 year. They've been around for 1 year. They've had 4 cards to date, and they basically built their brand on signing UFC outcasts or guys that are way past their prime or over their hill. I mean, that's literally all they're going is for name recognition.
That's it. No, that's 100% all they're going for.
You'd like to see other promotions.
Roger Horta was another night. I mean,
how many promotions actually develop their own talent anymore? Besides Bellator, I mean, they're good, you know what I mean. But a lot of promotions, they literally take UFC outcasts, and they try to.
There's guys
build
right on the cusp. There's guys that maybe we say UFC outcasts. I mean, you look at a guy, Patrick Cote, for example. Patrick Cote is a guy who you could call UFC outcast, but I could make a case to where he should still be fighting in the bigger promotions.
Well,
guys that can, but we're talking about guys like Phil Baroni, who's not even 500.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're actually talking about guys that are either sub 500 record or guys that are 4 or 5 straight knockouts.
Roger Horta, I mean, the guy's lost like 50 fights in a row.
I mean, it's like I said, it's not looking good for ONE FC. I mean, I'm going to do some digging. We got to find out what that draws. If they actually do put that together, I got to find. I mean, they can't be a pay-per-view. It can't even be on regular. It's got to be streaming, right?
No, I bet you it draws pretty good, man. Those fans over there are crazy.
Man, I don't know, man.
But going back to the Arlovski Silva, I was actually more excited when his original opponent was Soa Palele. I agree. I was actually more excited to see that fight because it's something.
At least something different.
Yeah, Soa Palele is like a kind of a well-known heavyweight to the hardcore fans, but. Get him in there against somewhat of a name. Tim Sylvia, albeit, not the best in the world. It would have been good.
It would have been a lot better for Palele to get himself back into a Zuffa promotion.
But I read another article. I read it. Soa Palele, they wanted him to sign like a 4 or 5 fight deal, and what kind of person would do that?
Yeah.
Who would sign that kind of contract to ONE FC?
Yeah, not ONE FC. I mean, clearly but then on the other hand, who knows how much they're talking about breaking them off. I wouldn't imagine it would be that much. I mean, you don't have a TV deal. How much could you break somebody off at the end of the day? Yeah. I don't know. See what happens there. Speaking of guys that are past their prime, Seth Petrozelli shifts gears from MMA, goes to K1. For me, you look at a guy like Petrozelli. He says he's, obviously he's coming from mostly a stand-up background. I mean, since he was a little kid. He's one of 8 fighters in the upcoming K1 U.S. tour, landing in L.A. in September. Do you think that you'll see guys that are predominantly strikers like Petrozelli, and Crow Cop for that matter, going to, maybe even Rampage, guys that clearly want to just stand and bang, don't want to worry about being taken down, you think you'll see the tide shifting and more guys like that going to K1?
No, I don't know. Because there's reason these K1 stars are coming to the UFC. Whether it's the way the promotion is treating them, maybe it's just the money. I don't know. I heard somewhere where the winner of this tournament's going to get $1 million.
Yep, that's right.
I mean, if that's the case, if they're throwing out that kind of cash, I'd imagine some of the bigger stars will start going over there. You mentioned Quentin Rampage Jack. Last I checked, he doesn't do too well protecting kicks. So I can only imagine what some of these guys would do to him with
very
leg
interesting.
kicks.
But at least you won't have that argument where, this guy just wants to take me down.
You know what I hate, by the way? I hate?
It's like saying somebody won't play to my strength, so let me go find somebody who will.
I can't stand those
like
excuses.
It either.
You know what? If you don't like a guy taking you down the entire fight,
learn how to sweep. Do something.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
stay busy.
Do something in the gym, man.
I agree.
Improve your game. Improve your game. If you don't like, Nick Diaz, man, one of my favorite fighters, probably number 2. If you don't like guys that just go in there and take you down, do something about it. It was what I always.
Absolutely.
You got to do something about it.
In my mind, going to K1, I mean, for me, it's not really any different than, straight grapplers wanting to go in a grapple-only turn. That's okay.
Yeah.
But like I said, let's call it what it is. And, as far as I'm concerned, guys that only want to do striking, I mean, for me, that window's got to be a lot smaller now.
Well, you look at a guy like Mark Hunt, for example. I noticed he's basically
500 MMA record,
and he's basically a kickboxer. Yeah. But I mean, he doesn't even want to stay in K1. I think he fought like once. There's got to be a reason these guys don't want to fight in K1.
Well, I know there's a lot of dissension in the ranks. K1 as an organization hasn't had the greatest track record in terms of keeping talent, being consistent that way. So, I'm sure probably a lot of that plays into it. But I mean, man, it's hard to say. I think you'll see a lot of guys that are basically one-dimensional or getting outclassed with the caliber athlete you see in the MMA world today. But it's, the guys that clearly have more to offer than just striking, I think those are the type of guys you're going to see come over into UFC, MMA in general.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So, you know what? Like I said, I'm excited that there's another promotion. I mean, regardless of what you want to call it, competition is good. Everybody watching the show, I'm assuming, is fight junkies. I mean, if you're watching, ESPN radio show streaming, I'm assuming you got to be a fight fan, right?
Right.
I'm pretty sure everybody out there is going to check it out. So,
No, I'll watch, that's for sure.
Get in line behind us. We're there. Josh Koscheck, he's out of the UFC 151 co-main event. He had a bulging disc. And, before today, as we're, preparing all these stories, we're thinking, man, they're just going to have to scrap the co-main event altogether. But then I hear Jay Haran, who's actually put together a nice little streak of wins outside of the UFC. He has the call to come back up to the big leagues. And in my opinion, he has nothing to lose. Ellenberger has – it's a lose-lose for Ellenberger. It's a win-win for Haran, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Ellenberger, he doesn't have the greatest he got the biggest push and had a lot of hype.
He did. He sure did.
He's fallen on some hard times recently, and I would argue that I don't think he can really his career in the UFC, being in the mainstream with that kind of run, he can't afford another loss. And when you take a guy, anytime you take a guy on 3 weeks' notice, I mean, it's dangerous for both guys. But like I said, nobody's expecting anything from Haran, and everybody's expecting Ellenberger to go in there and put on a good show versus Koscheck. Now he can't. So, I mean, would you think to most casual mainstream fans that, in a lot of people's eyes, Jake Ellenberger's got to steamroll over Jay Haran to at least look halfway decent and walk away with something?
Well, I mean, to keep on getting high-profile fights, he does. I'm not quite sure if we're talking about cutting him or anything like that if he loses. But he's definitely going to have to get his career back on track. But going back to Koscheck, man, is this guy? You think this guy is he done? I mean, is he ever going to get his career back on track?
I'm not going to say done because the guy's he's got incredible legit one-punch knockout power. But as far as being a wrestler, I mean, a herniated disc is the death of a wrestler, man. I mean, look at Tito had a herniated disc at 31. Like I said, Koscheck's like 34, 35 now. I mean, he's just that much older. I mean, For a guy that likes to shoot a lot of power singles and doubles, I can't see how a herniated disc is going to, disappear and not be a factor.
Koscheck does have one-punch knockout power. I'm not trying to take that away from him, but that was back when people were afraid of getting taken down every round.
Right.
The last couple fights we've seen him, he's just
predictable.
He's
very
just
predictable.
Sloppy right. I mean, it's like it's his goal is to throw 500 overhand rights, and
he does.
And he does, but back when he was knocking people out, he wasn't so predictable. He was the wrestler that just had that overhand right.
Right. He
now he's that guy that's just going to get in there and throw that overhand right 100 times.
You're right. He used to be the guy that, okay, look, man, we got a right, we got some knockout power in the arsenal now, and now it's kind of when you look at him, his wrestling isn't. It's not the one thing that you're looking for. You're looking for the guy that's throwing overhand rights. And ever since GSP exposed him with that jab, I mean, that riddle's been solved, and you don't see a different guy.
I don't know. I don't want to question his motivation. Obviously, all these guys, train their ass off, but you just wonder. You see the primetime special with him, and he's showing off all of his cars and his planes. The guy's got some serious cash.
You got to wonder where somebody's desire is from here on out. Like Dana White always says, he calls out guys like Forrest Griffin and other types and he says, what do you have left to prove? You really don't have it. You've made millions.
Yeah.
You've got all the notoriety and fame, but it's hard for these guys to want to hang it up. And as far as Koscheck is concerned, I mean, he's had an exciting career. I don't think anybody can argue that. But man, I don't know what's next for him. Anybody. I mean, look at in baseball. I mean, when somebody has back problems, that's generally
that's no joke.
That's generally something that kind of dictates or changes the rest of their career forever.
I mean, what are we talking? Probably at least a year before we see him in there, and that time will be in his, he'll be
Carwin's been gone for a year. Same thing.
So I mean, I almost wonder if. I don't know. We just recently seen Mike Swick come back after a long layoff, so I don't want to say we won't ever see him again. But it almost makes you wonder if this is almost the end of Josh Koscheck, and that's too bad. I always was a fan of his.
I love a guy who runs his gums like Koscheck.
Absolutely.
That guy walks in there with swagger, moxie, man. I love all of it. Like I said, he's had a brilliant career. I mean, there's still good fights out there for him. I got a question. What is this injury going to do to him long term? Like I said, only time's going to tell.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
I want to ask you real quick before we go to take it to the book. And I know we've covered this a million times, but now that we're, real close to the fight, are you even remotely excited to see Bendo Egger 2 again? Are you even? I mean, you're a fight fan.
The card, or that match in particular?
That matchup, both. I mean, like I said, we're all fight fans here. I mean, yeah, we're excited because there's another card. I love the fact that there's fights almost every weekend. Yes, I'm going to watch it and have fun, but. Are you going to ask me where does this rank for me in terms of...
Take that out of the equation is what you're saying.
Take that out of the equation. Am I excited?
No, I could care less about this fight.
No, I'm tired of it, man. Like I said, I am glad, however, to find out, like as we're doing our research today, that Dana White, he put the stamp on those immediate rematches for good. He says regardless of the outcome, if Bendo loses, there's going to be no rubber match. He's going to have to get back in line. But for me, like I said, no use crying over spilt milk. What's done is done. But really, that should have been Dana White's stance. The day BJ Penn didn't win, like I said, they set a bad precedent. And that lightweight title, last time I heard, has had 3 consecutive immediate rematches. I mean, it's killing that division, in my opinion. And it's a deep division.
And there are cases, and I will fight this to the grave, man. There are cases, and there are guys that have deserved immediate rematches.
They deserve, but come on.
And Frankie Edgar, you were not it.
No.
You were not it. BJ Penn, you were not it.
It's ridiculous. It's like saying the guy that should have won didn't win. Let's give it another shot. They should have put in Benson Henderson's contract last time. You're going to have to beat Edgar twice if you want to keep that strap.
Yeah. It's pathetic. And I hope he does. I hope he goes out there and just stomps him. I hope it's just an explanation point on the whole thing, man.
And that's funny because, when you're up here in a public forum, you're supposed to be somewhat biased, but I am a fan first and foremost, and I care about what's best for the sport, not any one individual. And, in my opinion, the only need or necessity for an immediate rematch would be if it ended in a draw or some sort of controversy. That's it, not the odds-on favorite going home with a loss. That's not good enough for me.
Let me ask you something. So Benson Henderson wins. He wins decisively, right? And then
I believe he could. Excellent chance.
Then his next fight will most likely be against Nate Diaz.
Fight.
And then Nate Diaz beats him. He's got every right in the world to say, well, what's up, man? I mean, I had to beat Frank Edgar twice.
That's what I'm saying, and that's exactly what's probably going to happen because I think he's going to walk through. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go. I think he's going to walk through Frankie Edgar. I think this guy has got all the tools in his toolbox. This guy is the equivalent of a 5-tool player in baseball, in my opinion.
Yeah, sure.
I got no there's going to be no surprise for me if he goes out and does exactly what he just got done doing. And you know what? You're right. He has every reason in the world to say, hey, where's my rematch? You know what?
Yeah.
And every guy after him.
If he loses to Nate Diaz, you're absolutely right.
The Bucks got to stop somewhere.
You're absolutely
and you know what?
Man.
You want to throw around names like Jim Miller, Anthony Pettis. Gray Maynard's another one. I mean, that division is so stacked. I mean, it's time to see some new blood.
I mean, we've been stuck waiting. All these guys, Pettis and Nate Diaz.
They're on the shelf.
We're all just waiting. We're all just waiting for this 155 puzzle to just kind of solve itself, and it's disgusting.
That's
man.
right.
It's to the point now where it's almost the point where I've gotten a little bit of a dislike towards Frankie Edgar, and I hate to say that because I think he's a cool dude.
Yeah, no,
and
he's a good
guy. Fighter,
and
but
he's good for the sport.
It's just all these rematches and everything.
Over it,
yeah, man, I'm just ready to move on already, man.
It's time to move on. You know what? Like I said, you set a bad precedent with a otherwise great division, and let's be honest, a lot of these guys that are on the bubble of getting that title shot. I mean. What you'll find more often than not, I think, is guys that will wait. That title, they're knocking on the door of the title shot. They're not going to stay active because they don't want to jeopardize that shot.
Yeah, so but then we got all these guys on the shelf for you. I mean, when's the last time we seen Anthony Pettis fight?
Been a while, man.
I mean,
it's a shame.
And Nate Diaz, they're talking about putting that fight together at the end of the year, December.
That's way too long. That's and like I said, you have a train wreck here in the lightweight division, and it's a very stacked division. I'm glad that this is the end of the final rematches.
Yeah.
You're killing that division, in a lot of people's opinion, not just mine. And it's time to move on. It's time to let some new blood get in there. And like I said, you got a division that deep for a guy like Edgar or Benson Henderson, for that matter, to lose the last fight, getting back in line, not the end of the line, but just getting back in line somewhere. There's a ton of fantastic fights out there for you to build up your brand. Like I said, it's time.
Worst case scenario is we get some split decision, Frankie Edgar barely wins. It's a worst case scenario that could happen Saturday night, let me tell you that.
You know what? This card, like I said, we're going to preview the card on Saturday and everything. And you know what? In my opinion, this could go either really good or it can go horribly wrong. I don't think there's going to be any in between.
Right.
The matchups are such that, if Benson Henderson doesn't put him away, I mean, look for another 5-round fight. Same with every other fight on the card. Like I said, if you're not going to see finishes, you're going to see a lot of decisions, and again, you're going to see a lot of frustrated people. I hope it doesn't go that way, but I think it's an all or nothing type of deal.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Brings us to our next segment, final, my favorite, take it to the book. For me, got to go with lots of chalk this week. I know you were giving me a little grief about that on the way in here.
Do.
But yeah, like I said, that's the way I see it going down. I'm going Bendo minus 200. Jake Shields also minus 200, and Yushin Okami, man, throwing that guy throwing that guy in your parlay almost does nothing for you. But
so why do it?
Because
why even take that risk?
I believe that he is going to do it. I believe in Yushin Okami. I want that 3-legger, and I want to stick it in your face. That's what I'd like to do.
We'll see. I mean, I'm not saying Yushin Okami's not going to win that fight, but at minus 600, you got to stay away from that.
You
got to stay away from those. But
going all chalk does nothing for your payout. 100. Basically gets you 1.5, almost even money. Like I said, going all chalk, that's the beauty. It is what it is. Book it.
All right. I also got Benson Henderson at minus 200. I think he's got something to prove in this fight, and I think he'll do it. I got Justin Lawrence over Max Holloway at minus 110. This is a pick'em fight. Both guys are at a minus 110 on just about every book. Justin Lawrence looked phenomenal his last fight. Max Holloway, still not sold on his power. He doesn't really have the power to finish people. Great stand-up fighter, but I just don't like his power. And I'm going to tell you something. Like you said earlier, we're going to preview this on Saturday. Melvin Gillard versus Donald Cerrone. And
Fantastic.
I'll tell you what.
Can't wait to see that.
Melvin Gillard at a plus 220, I think that's the perfect dog. I'm not quite sure he's going to win this fight, but at those odds, I think you throw him in your parlay, and you let it ride, baby.
I like him standing for a little bit in this fight at least, and that's his best chance.
Bendo, Lawrence, and Melvin Gillard. I have no idea what that's going to pay out, but it's going to pay out a lot more than this guy's pays out.
You know what? I find that interesting that you'll tell people to stay away from a minus 600 and a big time dog, but you'll throw a pick'em fight. Now, why is that?
Because I think
pick'em fights are they could go. It's 50-50. They could go either way.
It's 50-50, but I don't think it's 50-50.
You think they made a mistake?
I think Justin Lawrence is going to dominate that fight.
Well, that's different. All right.
But with the Melvin Gillard thing, like I said, I'm not. If I had to pick with a gun in my head who's going to win that fight, I think Daniel Cerrone, would be the favorite. But at those odds, you gotta like.
Well, I also like a guy that loves to stand like Donald Cerrone, and that's Melvin Gillard's forte. I mean, you want a guy that's going to keep it standing if you're Melvin Gillard.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see if he's going to keep standing.
I like it. We'll see what's what. And I know we promised you we're going to keep track of those picks starting last week, and don't think for a second I forgot. Only went 2-1. Got a no action on Phil Davis, although I think I could have gone 3-1 had he not poked him in the eye. But like I said, it is what it is. We'll keep track of these picks because I really want to stick to everybody.
I'm not keeping track, so I don't even know how last week
Don't
went.
worry. I'm going to keep track of yours for you. Don't even worry about that. Facebook, Pound for Pound Sports. Twitter, @Nick PFP Sports.
I'm at Darren PFP Sports.
PFPsports.com is your main page. Click on the little radio icon. It's the radio app. You can listen to us live 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You got anything else you want to add?
No, I don't.
Praise be to the Most High. That ain't no lie. See you guys next time.
Cheers.
Peace.